Derbyites, I'm here with Amanda Spears. We're going to talk about episode 211, Vengeance is Mine. I've literally just finished watching it and I'm still shaking. I really am. I just can't believe how good this show is getting. I am just shocked by the events at the end of that episode. I had no idea they were coming, obviously. Amanda, what did you think?
It flew by so fast, I didn't even realize it was over until the credits started rolling. And I was like, good for Mary. Bravo. Because really, I didn't understand why they had submitted her for supporting actress. And then I'm like, oh, this is it.
This is why. Yeah, because I was thinking, like, why on earth did they submit her? And, okay, I'm down with it now. I really am sorry for beating a dead horse, but Duncan LaCroix was so good in this episode again. That ending was so violent and so shocking. I haven't read the books, everybody, so please excuse me for that. I didn't see it coming, and he just did it perfectly. The look on his face when he was in the corner like a scowling lion, like you could just see this rage, and then he follows through, and the Duke of Sandringham is gone, literally, and Mary stabs the rapist. It was just a brilliant conclusion to a very, very good episode.
Yeah, I love Duncan LaCroix, and he is so good as Murtaugh. Murtaugh is easily like one of my favorite supporting characters now, and he was so good. And Jamie is very smart. He's like, killing a duke is going to add to more problems, so he just kind of beat him up a little bit and pushed him over to the corner. And then Duncan LaCroix, Murtaugh was like, yeah, no, that's not good enough.
No, it's not good enough, and we need to fix this. And it just occurred to me, I've probably been pronouncing his surname wrong. I apologise for that. I don't really know how to say it. That's because I'm an idiot. Also, I think Andrew Gower was really good in the beginning as Bonnie Prince Charlie. I always love seeing him on the show, and he really lets loose with the generals when they're just saying, you guys need to retreat, we need to go back. And he's like, no, we need to go forward. There was that argument, which could have just been just another kind of way to just move the episode forward, but it really wasn't. It was very well done, and that was because of him. He really sold that moment as well. I just wanted to raise, they were the two MVPs for me in this episode, as well as Simon Callow. He plays the Duke very well, very foppishly. I love how the episode started with him, he was fluffing the wig, which then fell down, which was important for what was going to happen at the end with his head. The guest acting on this episode was amazing.
Yeah, I loved the Duke of Sandringham. I loved the Duke up until he realized what he had done, and he's trying to justify this. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? You're trying to justify rape versus murder.
Yeah. It was like he was doing her a favor. All I did was get you raped. I didn't get you murdered. You should be thankful. It was almost like that.
I still did enjoy the scene where they're sitting there drinking wine and having like a snack waiting for all hell to break loose. And he's trying to figure out how she killed Saint-Germain because he was very interested in it and all the theories behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the guest acting, many of those characters or actors are actually being submitted in supporting, given that the amount of episodes they've been in. Why don't you take us through? You went through the ballot, thankfully. Very grateful you did that. Let's talk through where Outlander has been submitted at the Emmys.
Well, obviously they submitted themselves for series, which was, a good idea. Lead actor and lead actress for Sam and Claire. But I think for supporting actor, they might have submitted one too many. I would have just maybe kept it to Duncan LaCroix and Tobias Menzies, because I could see people really liking Andrew Gower or Stanley Weber as Saint-Germain and taking votes away. And if they're just trying to get into this category, it's going to be tougher now with that many people.
Yeah, they do. I noticed actually Outlander, or whoever was in charge of submitting for Outlander, did submit quite a lot in that category, as well as in some of the others. Why don't you talk us through the writing, for example, which could be problematic for them?
Yeah, a lot of series, and I know, for example, Game of Thrones only has 2 writers, and that's kind of the rule, is that if you write one episode on your own, you can submit that episode. You can't submit a second episode where you wrote it by yourself, but if you wrote it with someone, you can. But they submitted 7 episodes for writing, which is way too many nowadays.
Yeah.
Way too many. They submitted the season opener, Untimely Resurrection, Faith, Je suis presse, Presto Pants, Vengeance is Mine, the one we're talking about right now, and then next week's episode, the Hail Mary, which I think they should have boiled this down to maybe just one and submitted Faith. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think they should have submitted, like, they should have gone like with what Downton Abbey does, which they only ever submit one. I don't know if they only have one writer. I think they probably do. That's probably why. But a lot of the really savvy shows submit one, and maybe 2 at most. Outlander should submit Faith, and maybe if they really wanted to submit one more, honestly, I probably would have submitted this one because it's written by Diana Gabaldon and it has the link to the novel, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason Game of Thrones has ever submitted 2 is one was written by George R. R. Martin, and a show like The Leftovers, which has a writing staff, they only submitted 1 episode, which we all know what that is International Assassin. That's another example where you might hurt a few feelings, but if you want a nomination, that's kind of the way to go about it.
Yeah, and same for directing. For example, we'll use The Leftovers because that was a show that was overlooked, like Outlander. They're being really smart this year because they really want Emmy nominations and they deserve them. Their second season was so brilliant, just like Outlander. Outlander really improved in its second season. So The Leftovers in directing submitted International Assassin, but they also, and that was Craig Zobel, they also submitted the finale for Mimi Leder because she's one of the very important directors for that show, and so that's why they submitted just 2 in directing. What did Outlander do in directing? They submitted a lot, didn't they?
Yeah, and they did not submit Presto Pants, which is the weird thing to me. I would triple check this because I just wanted to make sure, but they submitted Untimely Resurrection, Faith, which I completely understand, Je suis presse, which deals with the PTSD, maybe, and then this episode, Vengeance is Mine, which kind of plays a little like a play since it takes place most in the Dukes of Sandringham's house. So that,
yeah,
maybe.
When I was doing my notes for this episode, I did actually write down that this episode, Vengeance is Mine, is a very good example of really effective directing, especially when we're watching the 1740s car chase scene with our Highlander heroes on horses being chased by the British Army on horses and shot at. It was also a really good example of cinematography and editing, but the direction of it was so perfectly done. It was so effective. And then Rupert obviously gets shot in the eye. That's what leads them to going to the prison, which then leads them to being surrounded, for Claire being taken as a hostage, and that's how we get to the Duke of Sandringham. It was really, really effective episode in the way it was directed. But let's talk about Diana Gabaldon. Is this the first time she has written for the show? I actually don't know the answer to that question.
I don't know either. I have to check. I would assume she maybe did 1 episode in their very long first season.
Right, and so apologies everybody for us not doing that research, but we can't know everything. But let's just talk. She's a very, very good writer for television. I mean, we all have heard how wonderful her books are. I haven't read them. My wife has. She loves them. But I think she's a really good writer for TV as well. And I really congratulate her for this episode. It was very, very well done.
Yeah, I think 2 was the most they should have done for writing.
Yeah.
It's way too many. They've spread themselves way too thin in that category. And if they don't get in, but they get some nominations elsewhere, that's going to be their reason why. So hopefully they'll take this more as a learning experience. But good for them, for the costume directors. They submitted their best episode, which is episode 2, where they had the big party and she's in that big red dress. And it was kind of their signature one. Okay. They're in a good spot because they were nominated at the Guild. So that's
right. So they didn't submit the Untimely Resurrection, which is what I had a feeling they might, and they didn't submit any of the later Highlander ones. So it was definitely episode 2. That's good. Okay, that's helpful. And
submitted, not in Scotland anymore.
Right. And what about production design? Did they submit Faith?
Production design, yes, they submitted Faith, and then also because it does take place in the Castle of Versailles, not in Scotland anymore.
Right. Okay. I think they have a really good shot of being nominated in those two categories and probably winning. So I'll be looking up for them on Emmy nominations morning. But in terms of the primetime Emmys, the actual night, the non-creative arts, I think, given what we've seen on the ballot, and just correct me if I'm wrong, the character who plays Mary, she was submitted in supporting actress, right? That's what we were saying earlier. Are there any other supporting actresses, or is she the only one?
She is the only one, and the only guest actress is Frances de la Tour, and she submitted Faith as her sample episode.
Okay, she's a possibility, but I think Katrina stands the best chance. Sam Heughan deserves a nomination, but as we've discussed earlier, it's a very competitive category for him. And in the supporting actors, Tobias Menzies is the biggest name. I'd love to see Duncan in there. And we're probably going to talk about Tobias next week. Let's not even go there right now. But
I'm not going to say anything.
No, there's a lot to talk about next week for Tobias. We haven't seen him in a while, and I really, really want to see more from him. So I'm glad that he features in the next episode. So look, we could see Outlander a little bit on Primetime Emmys night, and fingers crossed that happens, because this season is just getting better and better. I was completely awestruck by Vengeance is Mine. Were there any other highlights we can talk about while we're on?
Well, we did see some old school dentistry. That was horrifying.
Yeah, that was hard to watch. My God.
Why are you pulling teeth? And
I don't know. Yeah, I also really, really loved the Jamie reciting that whispered prayer over Claire while she's sleeping. I just was thinking, geez, the fans who love the romance on this show would have just been completely besotted with him by that scene. And then I thought about my own personal drinking game, which is when Sam Heughan takes his shirt off, you really need to take a swill. So we got those moments in the episode, but it was really, actually, without me being a smart ass, it was actually a really effective scene, the way he was reciting that prayer over her. It's so obvious that Jamie just is completely and madly in love with Claire and wants the best for her, and it set up what was going to happen later in the episode when he had to let her go. So that was the only way for them to get out of that situation.
Yeah, I love that scene. But again, I really love Murtaugh, and I will share my fan theory, which I'm sure those who've read the books. But I don't think Jamie would send Claire back to the future to a Randall without sending someone to look after her. So I think Murtaugh is about to adapt to the 40s.
Yeah, what a great theory. I wonder, we could be totally off, but wouldn't that be a really cool twist to have someone like Murtaugh, who is so old school, but yet he's like so emotionally intelligent, and so surprisingly emotionally intelligent. For him to be her guardian angel back in the future, so to speak, would be a really cool twist, but I have no idea if that's going to happen.
I don't know either. It's just this feeling I have, like Sam really hates, Jamie really, really hates Randall. So I don't know if their great grandson, he's just gonna let her go back to him without someone just kind of hovering around in the shadows, personally.
Yeah. But again, it was a really well done episode, but that highlight at the end, the climactic scene when Murtaugh just takes to the Duke with an axe, was shocking, like very, very, very graphic. It reminded me that, yes, this show does air on Stars on premium cable. It was warts and all. And yeah, I think it was necessary. I don't think it was gratuitous. You needed that closure from that whole story that, from the moments in Paris when Mary and Claire are attacked. We find out it was a Duke behind it. He was trying to pay off his debts to Saint-Germain, and then Murtaugh and Jamie, they were there to kind of put an end to it, and they sure as hell did that.
Yeah, and I just love how after Murtaugh brought vengeance to her feet as he promised, Mary's like, I think we need to go.
I think we need to go. And I was just like, yes, you do need to go. You need to move on.
Before the British soldiers come and go, what in the world?
Yeah, what on earth's happened here? I want to go back to a theory that you raised a couple of weeks ago, and you got a little bit of flack for it unfairly, I think, when you said that Claire is not a damsel in distress. She doesn't need rescuing. She's a woman of the world, and she's more of an equal. This episode proves that, because even though at the end she did need to really physically need to be rescued by Jamie and Murtagh because she was being held by the Duke, it was Claire who put herself in that position by, it was her idea to be the hostage, to be taken by the British Army. She's very brave. She's not a damsel in distress, and anyone who says otherwise, I don't think that you've got it right. It's an equal arrangement. She's not like the strongest one of the show. We're not trying to say Sam is not as strong as she is, or not Sam, Jamie. It's an equality there, and that's what makes this show so empowering for women, and that's a great thing.
And she saved all of those men's lives by going with the British soldiers. They would have been massacred if she just let Jamie do what Jamie wanted. Right.
It's because she's smart, and she's been there, done that. She's got experience, and that's something that I want. That's the kind of show. Maybe when my daughter is over 18, because it's so violent and graphic. But that's the kind of characters that I want young girls to aspire to. Someone who is smart and can think, and who doesn't need rescuing every 5 minutes. That's a good thing.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's what we think about this episode 211. It's just getting better and better. When we were off, I'll just say this, when we weren't recording, Amanda mentioned that the next one's a doozy. So I am really rearing myself up to go and watch that one. And we'll be back next week, hopefully with Ted. He couldn't make it today because he's at a wedding. Thanks, Derbyites. Thanks for joining us. And remember, Gold Derby is where all the Outlander action is at in the lead up to the Emmy nominations in a few weeks.